let's talk about JavaScript. I would like to play with several snippets on JavaScript. So the very first thing we should know is how to start typing JavaScript. How to get a view like that, right? If you have this view, it's a very good starting point because it's very easy to, to do tricks with JavaScript. But the question is, how do we get that view? Well, let's have a look. I'm assuming everybody has Google Chrome. That's the only requirement for today, right? Easy. I mean, technically speaking, you don't even need Google Chrome. You can use any browser, but I'm going to use Chrome today. So with Google Chrome, the way to enable that view where you can play with JavaScript and all these things, please open a new tab in Google Chrome, empty tab, if possible, and then do right-click anywhere. You will see an inspect option at the bottom. Yeah. And once you open the inspect function, inspect button, you'll get something like that, more or less. I believe by default, if it's the very first time in your life you open DevTools, you'll see at the bottom, right, a banner with some options. You got that? Maybe not in dark color, but you'll see that, right? You will see that banner. So what I'm going to recommend you, because you can change the layout of that banner, so you can display different ways there are different ways to display that. But the way I'm going to suggest you for this event is use the three dots on the right-hand side. So with the three dots, you can see that we can rearrange the DevTools. I'm going to recommend you to click on the first one and dock into a separate window, right? Why? Because then we have the entire window for us, right? Even better, right? Once we have that, next thing I'm going to ask you is to click on not necessarily the second tab, that depends on your Chrome, but you will see on top something called sources. You see sources? It's one of the tabs in the browser, right? When you click in sources, you may see on the left-hand side a panel with several options, right? Please try to find an option called snippets. You may have to click on the tiny arrow on the left, and you will see several options: page, file system, overrides, content scripts, snippets. On the tiny arrow on the left-hand side, sources. Is everybody here? Is anyone lost already? Right. Yeah. Thank you, Rafa. Right. Snippets, right? Snippets is the way we can easily play with JavaScript in Google Chrome. And we can save the snippets, so next time we open the browser, the snippets are there. Is everybody on the snippets? Yes? Oh, good, right? Easy. So now, probably, if it's the first time, you got nothing. So you can click on the plus button, new snippet. You see, new snippet? And then once you create a new snippet, you can add a name. I mean, in the long term, I suggest you to put a meaningful name, right? Because you may have multiple snippets. So I'm going to call it Intro to JavaScript. So once you've set up a meaningful title for your snippet, then we can start dealing with JavaScript. I'm going to minimize the left navigation panel. You can click on the hide navigator. That's optional. It's because to me it feels a bit noisy to have all the snippets if I'm going just to play with one, right? So you see the little arrow pointing to the left on top. If you click on it, you got more space, right, for you. Also, to help you to read the screen, I'm going to zoom that view. You don't need to do that, obviously, because I'm sure you can see your screen properly. But just to help you, especially the guy sitting on this desk, I will be a bit more convenient. Is everybody here? Yeah, cool, nice. So now let's start typing JavaScript. There is just one requirement to type JavaScript. And it goes beyond the scope of this session to explain the reasons.
Is everybody here?
Yes, we're here. I'm trying, you know, time travel. Cool, so the only requirement to start typing JavaScript, and again, I'm not going to explain at the moment why, is please open and close curly braces. That's the only thing, the only weird thing we're going to do today. Open and close curly braces. So every single line of code will happen inside of the curly braces. Yeah? All good? Yeah? Fine. Fine. So I'm going to create the most simplistic structure in JavaScript, which is a very basic function. JavaScript is a functional programming language. That means everything is a function. So let's write our very first function. We can type function to declare a new function, and then the name of the function. I'll call it welcome. After typing the name of the function, we need to open and close parentheses. We'll see in a minute what that means, but for now, just open and close parentheses. And then, very important, open and close curly braces. With the curly braces, we're surrounding the boundaries of the function, right? So once we have this function, essentially, now we can return something. How do we return something? Well, simply type return, and then using quotes, either single or double quotes, whatever you prefer. I hope you can find the quotes in your keyboard, right? With quotes, type a message. I'm going to type welcome to JavaScript. That's the most simplistic data. That's the most simplistic structure in the amazing world of JavaScript. But now, we have just declared the function, but we haven't invoked. So how do we execute that function? It's very easy. Simply, below the function, after the brackets, you see, after the brackets, type welcome and open and close parentheses. These semicolons are optional in modern JavaScript. Is everybody here? Easy, right? So let's recap. Function, and then invoke the function. Right? Now the question is, how do we execute that code? Look, you may have noticed that there is a button here that says run a snippet. Can you click on that button, please? You see? As soon as you press that button, run a snippet, you get the message displayed at the bottom. Yeah? That's the way we run snippets. Of course, we can click on that button as many times as we want. Right? Is everybody following me? Yeah? If anyone has any problem, please contact Natasha or Rafa. Right? Any question? No? Easy, right? That's the most simplistic way to run functions in JavaScript. Because as you can imagine, we'll be running that several times. There is a shortcut if you are interested. You see, Google Chrome is suggesting what the shortcut is. If you are a Mac user, the shortcut is Command Enter. If you're a Windows user, the shortcut is Control Enter. If you're a Linux user, I'm sure you know how to do it. So, as soon as you change the function, for example, if I add several exclamation marks, I run it again, you get the new result, right? That's predictable. the browser immediately shows the correct message that we are returning, right? Any question? No? Okay, so let's add some spices to the example. This text is hard-coded. We are returning the same text again. But what happens if we are a mobile developer and we are creating an app for mobile? Actually, talking about mobile, a bit off topic. One of the reasons why JavaScript is so popular is because it's the very single programming language that gives you the opportunity to create universal apps. You can create an app with JavaScript and you can run the app on every device, every platform. You can run JavaScript in a browser. You can run JavaScript on desktop. You can run JavaScript on mobile, on a tablet, everywhere. That's why JavaScript is not only the most popular programming language in the world, it's more popular than top 2 and 3 combined, according to GitHub, which is the Bible of coding. That's the reason why you should learn JavaScript. So we are building a very beautiful mobile app. So whenever the user opens the app, we want to say, welcome back, Peter, or welcome back, Luis, welcome back, Mary, you know, custom message. Let's see how to customize this boring function. Instead of welcome to JavaScript, I want to say welcome to JavaScript, comma, Peter. Right? Yeah, fair enough, that works. So if I run the snippet, welcome to JavaScript, Peter. But what happens if instead of Peter, we want to display Luis? The same thing, we can change it. But we don't want to change the function every time we got a new user. That doesn't make any sense. So what we want to do is to display a dynamic message. In other words, I want to be able to pass a new user here. Look at what I'm doing now. This is vital. Inside of the parentheses, when we invoke the function, we can pass a variable, Peter. Right? So if we pass a variable, does anybody know how to access that variable here?
We need to create a variable name inside the bracket. Correct. If we pass a variable here, we can capture the variable here, which makes sense. You see, from parentheses to parentheses. So here, we can create a new variable. We can use whatever name we want. Generally speaking, from a semantics point of view, it's convenient to call, if that's a username, right, or the first name, I'm going to call it first name. But you can type whatever you want here. Whatever you type here will be assigned to that variable. We are not ready yet. If we run the example again, still, welcome to JavaScript Luis. I don't want to display Luis, I want to display Peter. Does anybody know how to change Luis with the value of the first name?
Put the parameter first name.
Parameter first name. Like that?
No.
No.
We have to close the...
Close, okay. After the quote, plus first name. What do you think, guys? Will this work? It will work. Nice one. Of course, that will work. Why this is so sexy? Because if instead of Peter, I got Mary, still works. So now the function reacts dynamically to the user we are providing. So if we are creating an app for mobile, we can set whatever name we want, right? This is why this is so flexible. Even though that's completely correct, one of the things we learned here in the bootcamp is to create modern JavaScript, is to follow modern standards. This is the old way to concatenate strings and variables. Does anybody know any better way to do that? No?
Yes.
How? How you say that?
Template.
Template literal. Who say that? That's correct. With modern JavaScript, we can use template literals. So you may have heard about ES6. ES6 was a big new release of JavaScript in 2015. So starting from 2015, look at how subtle this is. I can replace the single quotes or double quotes, both are equally valid, with backticks. You see that? If you're a Mac user, that symbol is at the bottom on the left of your keyboard. If you're a Windows user, that symbol is on the top left corner of your keyboard. So now, we need to do a few changes here. First of all, just surround everything with backticks. You see? And now, I can refer to that variable inside of the backticks using this special syntax. Look, $, open and close, curly bracket, and then first name. That's literally the same thing. So if we run this snippet again, welcome to JavaScript Mary, welcome to JavaScript Anthony, right? Whatever. It works. This is the recommended way, generally speaking, to combine hard-coded text and variables. It's easier. Maybe here is a bit hard to see. You cannot feel them that much different. But as soon as your message start getting more complicated, hello, first name, last name, welcome to the platform, your last login was on, as soon as the message gets more complicated, this is the recommended way to operate. Question for you. Is that name relevant? Can I rename first name with Brexit? Will this work? Yes, of course it will work, right? As we explained before, it doesn't matter the name you use here. The important thing is to remember that that function is expected to receive one variable, right? The first name. Obviously, from a semantics point of view, this is horrible because it's not informing, it's not telling you anything about the context of your function. Don't forget, this is a classic issue with junior developers, that some of them, they say, hey, listen, I'm creating a piece of software, I'm creating an app for mobile, I'm working by myself, I don't need to explain anybody what I'm doing because I'm working by myself. That's wrong. Don't forget, every software company has at least 2 developers. It's you and you after 6 months. If today you think Brexit is a good name for that variable, in 6 months' time, you'll say, what the fuck, what that means? That doesn't make any sense. So please, as a matter of respect, first of all to yourself, and then to your colleagues, use an appropriate variable name, right? What happens if we want to display not only the first name, but also the last name? Hello, welcome, Anthony William, for example. How do we do that? Comma, look, can we pass multiple variables to a function? Of course we can. Of course we can. With JavaScript, we can pass as many variables when we invoke a function as we want. So now, you tell me, how do we complete the exercise? I want to display the last name at the end. Can I do that? Will this work? No. A comma.
Yeah, and we need to add last name on the top of that.
That's correct. Does anybody know what that function will return at the moment? There is a free beer for the first one giving me the right answer here.
An error.
Error.
Missing error.
I think that's wrong. It's not an error.
Undefined.
What?
Undefined.
Undefined. So you think the function will return undefined? Wrong.
Missing an argument. Missing a
An error. Wrong.
Unclear?
Wrong. Wrong. Nobody? That will return something a bit exotic. Pay attention, guys.
Undefined.
Right? So now, right. It's throwing an error, as you said, so technically speaking, you are right. Right? So Sorry, that's not the example I wanted to show actually, right? So, yes, sorry, you're right. So that throws an error, but what I wanted to do is on the other way around. Sorry, that's my fault. I didn't explain that correctly. Like that. What the function will return now? That's not going to throw an error. That will return, welcome to JavaScript, comma, Anthony. What's the value of the last name? It's undefined. We are not providing any last name. You see? Look. You see? Welcome to JavaScript, Anthony, undefined. Right? Why? Because, of course, we are not passing any last name. If it any helps, and that goes a bit beyond the scope of this introduction to JavaScript session, but FYI, this tool is way more powerful than it looks like. For instance, we can add breakpoints. So a breakpoint is a way to stop the execution of your snippet at any line. Look, if I add a breakpoint on line number 3, I can click on the line number. What that means? That means if I run the snippet again, you see, now the execution is paused, is stopped on that line. Why this is convenient? Because now I can evaluate the value of my variables. You see, I can hover the variables. Anthony, ooh, let's name undefined. Ooh, something is wrong here, right? It's important to notice, again, it's not the goal of this session to explain how to debug with dev tools. We may do a separate session in the future, that if you're stopping the algorithm, please don't click, don't run the snippet again, don't do that. If I press this button again, Chrome will go crazy. So if you are in the middle of executing an algorithm to finish it, to kill it, you will see on the right-hand side, probably, not in my case because of the low resolution, but in your case, on the right-hand side, you will see a resume button, right? Resume script execution. If I click on there, it finished the execution, so now I can safely rerun it again if I want. So, any question? No? How do we display the last name of the user? Correct. We need to pass here the last name, right? For example, so how this works? Anthony will be assigned to the first name. Williams will be assigned to the last name. So then we can display our welcome message. You see? And of course, we can change any of these arguments, and that will still work. Right? Any questions so far? No? So this is the most fundamental way of creating functions in JavaScript. Let's talk about something a bit more complicated. Arrays. Have you ever heard about arrays? Yeah, maybe. So an array is essentially a list of data, list of things, right? Of what kind of things? We'll see in a minute. So I'm going to create here a variable. You can create variables in JavaScript using let. And I'm going to create an array. When we create a variable, the first thing to do is to declare the name of the variable. So let's display a list of characters. So the name of my variable is going to be characters. And then, what's the value of my characters value? I need to put equals, and then the value, right? So if I do that, do you know what type of data this is, Donald? A string. That's correct. If I do that, do you know what type of data 8 is? That's a number. That's correct. If I put false, what type of data false is? Boolean, correct. So how do we display an array? Square brackets, that's correct, guys. If we put square brackets, that's a special word in JavaScript. That means now we can pass a comma-separated list of values. For example, I'm going to have a list of characters, Donald, Boris, and Kim. So now, I want to create a function to return the size, the length of my list of characters. How many characters do I have? That's essentially the question, right? So from a human point of view, we can clearly determine how many characters do we have? 3, that's correct. So now the question is, how do we do that with JavaScript? Well, let's rename the function. It's not welcome anymore, right? Let's think about the semantics a bit. It's not welcome. I'm going to rename the function to how many characters, right? Remember to replace it both as part of the function definition and then when you invoke it at the bottom. And then I'm going to pass the characters variable. And of course, remember, we need to put the same thing here, right? So that variable will be mapped here, will be referenced here. You remember when we did the welcome first name? So first name was assigned to that variable. So now that's the way we can access characters inside of our function. How can we get the size of the characters array? Characters.length. That looks promising, guys. Characters.length. What will this function return? Yeah, correct. That will return a number, as you can see at the bottom, 3. That's the way you can check the size of a list of elements, right? It's pretty simple. Any question? Okay, and what if now, instead of trying to get the size of the list of characters, we want to return the first character, get first character, right? I'm renaming the function. You don't have to rename the function all the time if you don't want, but just for readability purposes, I'm renaming the function every time. So how do we return the first element of an array? Characters, position. What do you mean with position? Square bracket, 0. Why 0, not 1? Correct, correct. JavaScript is 0 based. That means if you want to return the first element, you need to put 0. So that will return what? D? No, not D. Donald, correct. Characters is an array of 1 element, index 0, 2 second element, index 1, third element, index 2. So if we run this code, it displays Donald. Yeah? Any question? How do we return the last element of the array? 2. Fair enough. 2. If I bring in the function instead of get first, get last character, that will return Kim, right? But what happened? What happened if now our list of characters changes? Will our function effectively return the last character or not? No. Why not? Right. If we run this code, it will return the element on position index number 2, which is 0, 1, and 2. That's not the last one anymore, right? So that will return Kim. Not good. So how do we effectively return the last element of an array? Dot length minus 1. Ooh, that's interesting. How do we put dot length? So we need to put characters dot length minus 1. That's correct. Why? Because character dot length will return What? No, not 3. 4, correct. But because we start on index number 0, this is 0, this is 1, 2, and 3. In other words, we need to subtract 1. So that will return the very last element of the array, regardless of how big the array is. So in that particular case, that will return Teresa. And if I delete 2 of the elements, right, that will return Boris. Now, our function is solid, is strong, because we don't care about how big or how small our array of elements is. It will always return the last one, right? Do you know how to invert an array? Donald is the first element. Now Kim is the last one. How can we flip the array? How can we put Kim on the beginning and then Donald at the end? I'll show you. There is a very nice method in JavaScript called reverse. It's pretty good, right? It's very simple. If I return characters.reverse, it will flip the elements of the array. It will put Kim at the very first and Donald at the end, right? Arrays are the most powerful data structure in JavaScript. In the long term, you will see that, generally speaking, will tend to transform everything into an array. Why? Because arrays have so many functions, lots of functions, right? I haven't even talked about pretty much any of them, but there are lots of things, lots of fun tricks that you can do with arrays. Any question? No? All good, right? So let's present another very important data structure in JavaScript, which are the objects. So as you already know, an array is declared by using a square bracket. Do you know how to declare an object in JavaScript? Curly bracket, that's correct. That's correct. I'm going to rename that, instead of characters, to character. Right? And then I'm going to, an object is essentially a collection of key value pairs. So it's like a database, right? I can declare multiple properties of an object. For example, first name, Donald, last name, Trump. You see? We can add multiple properties separated by comma to explain the behavior of our object. If you want to display lots of properties, generally speaking, it's a good idea to split the object across several lines. For example, if I want to add an email, whatever, right? You can see how difficult now my code is to read. I need to keep scrolling. That's a bad practice. In our Codity platform, you'll get penalties if you do this kind of things. We'll show that in 12 minutes. But for now, it's a good strategy, look, to put one property on each line. 1, 2, and 3. You see? So now, my character is very readable. Property, value, property, value, property, value. And of course, you can add as many properties as you want, right? So now the question is, if I have a function called getFirstName, I'm going to pass a character here. How do we display the first name of the given character? Character dot, that's vital, that's correct. The way to access property of an object is using dots. Character dot first name will return Donald. Here you go. Of course, we can replace first name with last name. It works, right? And with the email, of course. What happens if I try to access a property that doesn't exist? Date of birth, for example. What will this function return? No one? That will return undefined. Undefined is a very important keyword in JavaScript. Why undefined? Because we don't know, right, the date of birth of Donald Trump. We don't have that property in our dictionary, in our collection. We don't know. Undefined, we don't know, right? Any question? Objects can be more complicated than that. This is a single dimension object, but technically speaking, we can nest, we can indent objects. For example, I can have a property called name, which is another object. You see? First and last. So now, how do we display the first name of the character? Anyone?
Dot name, dot first.
Correct. That's correct. Dot name, dot first. You can see with dot syntax, you can drill down to any property of your object. You see? Donald. Whatever, right? Is there any question? No? Cool. We've learned how to deal with strings. We learned how to deal with arrays. We've learned how to deal with objects. So let's combine them. Let's make a more complicated example. I'm going to create an array of objects. So what an array of objects means? Let me simplify the character structure a bit. So I will have just the first name and last name, right? To keep it simple. First name, last name. Yep. This is an object. We know that already. But now, in reality, I want to have a list of characters. So each element of the array is an object. We can do that, right? So, essentially, we can do something like that. Because it's an array, first of all, we put a square bracket, and then so if we do that, how many elements our array of character has? How many characters do we have? One. That's correct. That's correct. So we can take that, right? And add more people in here, right? How many characters do we have now? Three. That's correct, guys. How do we display the get or how many characters? How do we display the size of our array? Characters.length. That's the same thing we learned before, right? That's correct. That's correct. 3. How do we display the second character?
Character 1.
Characters 1. That's it, right?
No.
No, I just want to display the second character, the entire object, right? So characters 1 points to the second object, the highlighted one. But what if in reality I don't want the entire details of that character? I just want the first name.
Dot first.
Where, here? No. After. That's correct. That's correct. You see? Here, this is a very powerful example, in my opinion, because we are combining arrays and objects. Characters 1 dot first name. Correct. Yeah? Make sense? Can we have arrays inside of objects that belong to arrays? It's mind-blowing, right? Can we do that? So not sure if I'm able to explain what I'm trying to do, right? So I'm trying to explain in which years that character was a president, right? Yeah, whatever. Does it make any sense? Is that valid in JavaScript? Of course it is. Look at how complex this data structure is. We have an array of objects. For every object, we have three properties. The first one is what type of data is that? String, correct. The second one is string, correct. And the third one is arrays, correct. Correct. How do we, well, we know that. How do we explain the years the president has been, that the character has been a president? Well, we can simply access that property, and that should return, look, for the first character, not the first one, sorry, for the character on index 1, which is the second, please tell me how many years that character has been president. Yeah, it works. Any question? No? Because we got 3 minutes left before doing the proper training, I would like to show you another very important data structure, which is probably simpler, but maybe not. It depends. Numbers. So, very basic, very basic. Sum A and B. I want to sum 3 and 4. How do we do that? Return what?
A plus B.
A plus B. Correct. Trivial, right? So obviously we can perform any mathematical operation. We can add, we can subtract, we can multiply, we can divide. Yeah? We can get the modulus. Do you know what the modulus is?
The remainder of division.
The remainder. Oh, correct. So if we divide 4 by 3, the division, that returns 1 point something, right? 1.3, period. Fine. But the remainder here is 4 divided by 3 is 1 point something. So the remainder is 1, right? Because if you divide 4 by 3, it's 1 point something, right? So to get an integer, yeah, that's the remainder, right? That's basic maths. So then if my question is, if instead of adding few values, I want to round. So I have a number, 4.3, and I want to round it. So what round means? Find the closest integer. So what's the closest integer of 4.3? 4, that's correct. Right. So how do we round numbers in JavaScript? Math.round, that's correct. Math.round. Wait a minute. Oh, I need to rename the function. Sorry about that. I call it round. So let's rename it. It returns 4, right? What do you think about the variable name, guys? A. Do you like it or not? That's a bad naming conventions. Don't call variables A, B, C, X, Y, Z, because you are not bringing any value to your algorithms. If I'm reading that code, I have no idea what A means. If I know A is a number, just call it number, right? That will help your colleagues to understand what's going on. So do you know how to get what the floor of a number is? So the floor of a number is the closest integer below or up to the given value. So the closest integer below 4.3 is 4 again. How do we calculate the floor of a number in JavaScript? Mat.floor, correct. Returns 4. And do you know what the ceil is? So the ceil, correct, is the first integer above the given number. Following the same criteria, we can do mat.ceil. And that will return what? 5. What happened if I pass 5? Will it return 5 or 6? 5, correct. Correct. Because 5 is the first number that is at least as big as the given one. Going backwards round, if the number is 5.3, what will that return? 5, correct. What if it's 5.8? 6, correct. What if it's 5.5? 5, 6? It is 6. It is 6. Because it will be 5 if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. It will be above if it's 5, 6, 7, 8.9. So that will return 6. Is there any question, guys? So this was the first part of the session. I would like now to do something a bit different, and I am going to invite you to do it with me in your laptops, if possible. So I would like to show you the way here our students master JavaScript. On top of these kind of exercises that we do very often, actually if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you will see that we do this kind of mental activities on a daily basis. On top of that, we do something. We do proper JavaScript training. So let me show you how that works. So, if you go to codedy.com, there is a button on top to play. I know it's a bit hard to see on the screen at the moment, but it will get better in a minute. So at codedy.com there is a button to play, and then if you're a new user, you can sign up. That's for free. So feel free to join us and to do JavaScript training. That's absolutely free. And then if you already got a user, if not, you can sign in. So if not, you can sign up. If you got a user, you can just sign in. And then you can start with the training. So this platform is the thing we have created here at Codedy to, first of all, improve you with your JavaScript skills. And then if you are good, just to compare against others. So you will see on the left-hand side something called training. If you click on training, you see we got 3 levels of difficulty, right? We start on beginner, then we go to intermediate, and eventually we do expert, right? And things obviously get more and more and more and more complicated. But on the beginner, essentially, you can see we got few topics. Some of them we've been tackling them today. We've been talking about strings, we've been talking about math operations, we've been talking about objects, arrays, not everything, right? But some of these topics have been covered already. So let's do one of these. Which one? For example, objects, right? So if we do objects, if you click on objects, you'll get something like that. You are going to receive 5 questions about JavaScript, and that's the way you'll be training your skills. For example, question number 1, get the first name. So we expect to create a function called getFirstName that receives 1 argument, which is an object with first name and last name. So if the first name is Peter, we expect to return Peter. If the first name is Mary, we expect to return Mary. That's pretty much what we've done today, to be honest, right? Let's do that. If you do that by yourself, FYI, on every single question on the beginner training, we have a dedicated, very short, maybe 1 to 3 minutes video where we explain how to deal with the problem. So let's solve that, guys. How many arguments our getFirstName function receives? 1, correct. Can you tell me a good name for the argument here?
First name.
No, wrong.
Person.
Person. Okay, I like person. I like person. Right? If we read the instructions, and I know sometimes this is a bit boring, we receive an object with some user details. That's a user, right? We can call it person, we can call it, you know, user, player, but don't call it first name, because that's not just the first name. It's an object with some user details. So let's call it person. Person. So then, how do we get the first name of the person? Person dot what? First name. Oh, nice. Someone mentioned return. What happens if we run the algorithm? You can see you have a blue button on top to oh, that's my face on top of the button. On the top right corner, you have a blue button that says evaluate result, just literally behind my ugly face. So if you click on that button, it will check if your answer is correct or not. And then you said, oops, you didn't return anything. Why? Because we forgot to add a return statement. Do you remember, guys? Return. Unless you have a very good reason to not to do that, every function should return something. A function is like a black box. You invoke the function, you send some data, and the function gives you something back. You send an object with the person details, and the function returns the first name. So let's run that. Great, looking better this time. So now the result is correct. We can progress to the next question. However, can you spot any problem here?
You didn't call the function.
No, we do it. Well, the tool is automatically calling the function. We don't have to call it. So the platform will call get first name twice with different values. So we don't have to call it. But can you see anything a bit smelly here?
Semicolon.
The what?
Semicolon.
Semicolon, that's correct. Hey, that's valid. That's correct. In the past, few years ago, semicolons were mandatory. Today, they are optional. However, part of the community still consider a good practice to keep the semicolon. That's why what happens if you don't put the semicolon? Look at the bottom, you'll get a warning, missing semicolon. One of the reasons why our students get a job at the end of the bootcamp is because they know how to write industry standard JavaScript. If you don't follow these patterns, this is not what I make up, right? What I made up. This is based on ESLint. ESLint, if you never heard about it, is the de facto standard tool to evaluate the quality and how strict your JavaScript code is. Missing semicolon. So let's put a semicolon. Let's try again. Still works. Ready to go. So we can progress to question number 2. Oh, we've done that today already, guys. It's pretty much the same problem, but now we got a nested object. We got the name, and inside of the name, we got first. Let's do the same exercise. Get first name. Arguments. How many arguments? 1. Tell me, argument name.
Person.
Person, okay. And then what? Return first name.
No, return name dot first.
Name dot first. What do you think, guys?
Person. Name.
Let's try that. That won't work. Look what happened when we evaluate that. Ooh, look at the console, right? Name is not defined. Why name is not defined? Well, where is that name coming from? From nowhere. Why we brought a variable? We are not using person, right? So we need to put person on the left, right? It's like, hey, out of the person, access the name property here, and from there, please give me a property called first. Yeah? Will this work, guys? Will we get any penalty from the elegance point of view? It doesn't look like, right? That looks pretty sexy, solid, simple. So let's evaluate that. That's correct. Look, all green, and then from the console point of view, no elegance related issues found. Any question? No? Right. So question number 3. On question number 3, I'm going to skip that one because this is a bit more complicated. I don't want to mess around. So I'm going to skip that question. And question number 5. We haven't learned that, but okay, because we still got 4 minutes left. Let's think about that. I think it's a good exercise. So look at the problem here. What type of data do we receive? Is it a string? Is it an object? Is it an array? Is it a Boolean? Is it a number? What type of data do we receive?
An array.
Wrong. It's not an array.
Object.
It's an object. That's correct. Look at the curly braces. See, remember, arrays, square braces or brackets. Objects, curly braces or brackets, right? So we receive one object, and then what we want to return is the list of keys of that object. So what type of data are we returning? A string, an array, an object, a function, a Boolean, a number? What type of data is that, guys? Wrong. It's an array. Yes, we learned that today, right? Curly braces, array. Sorry, excuse me. Square braces, array. Curly braces, objects, right? Cool. So how do we access the keys of an object in JavaScript? Does anyone know?
Top keys.
That's correct. That's correct. First of all, what's the name of the argument? What's that? What are we talking about? Let's read the instruction. So the instructions doesn't give us any clue about what's that, right? Just people, right? Let's assume that we're talking about humans. So let's display as the argument person again, right? Because we don't know if they are artists, writers, we don't know. Just people, right? Okay, we got a person. So the way to display the keys of an object in JavaScript is doing return object with capital O dot keys, which is pretty convenient, right? Because it's like, hey, I have an object, give me the keys, and then inside of the parentheses, we provide the objects we want to get the keys from. Will this work? Yes or no? It will probably work. Let's have a look. It does work. Did we get any penalty here? Semicolon. You're right. Missing semicolon, right? At the end. So, once we do that, then we can evaluate it. And if it works fine, no elegance related issues found, right? Yep. So then there's still a question number 5. So let's do that. Last question, guys, I promise. It's very similar, very similar. We have again another object with some key values, but in this case, we don't want the keys. We want the values. How do we do that with JavaScript? Say it again? Dot values. Do you remember before we did object.keys? Yeah. Now we can do return object.values in plural. And then we pass the person we want to get the values from, right? By the way, FYI, have you ever heard about Visual Studio Code? Yeah, Visual Studio Code is the most popular coding editor today in the world because of multiple reasons that go beyond the scope of this session. One of them is because it's written in JavaScript, surprisingly. It's one of the most important projects written in JavaScript today. And because it's written in JavaScript, you can integrate it. This is a web app, and this is the editor of Visual Studio, which is pretty awesome, I believe. I mean, not because of us, we did nothing, right? Pretty much we did nothing. Why this is so convenient? Because we can have the same shortcuts. For example, with Visual Studio, you can select the same variable multiple times, and then you can rename it. Look. You see? It's pretty cool. Really good. Really good, right? So, yes. And obviously, you got syntax highlighting. you know, it's good. It's very convenient, right? You can find, you can replace, you can do so many things, and everything is web-based. So if we run that, it works as you can see. So now, again, we receive an object with key values, and we return an array with the values of that given object. Any question? No? So I think we are ready to submit that. At the end, because we skip one of the questions, right? We can revisit it if you want. I'm going just to ignore it. So once you submit the exercise, you get a score. So the score tells us how good you are with JavaScript. Here, what are we evaluating? So we're evaluating tenacity, means how many questions you've solved. Accuracy, how many times you press the submit button and you fail. I think I failed once or twice here. You can see here, in the question number 1 and question number 2, I failed. Speed, how much time it took you to complete the exercise. Focus, how many times you went to Google, right, to check for the solution. And elegance, you know, the elegance console, right? Are you ignoring the elegance console, yes or no? Why this is convenient? Because, last thing for today, guys. On top of the training, we do coding challenges. So I'm going to sign in as an admin user to show you some of the challenges that we do both privately as part of the bootcamp and publicly as part of the meetup. So coding challenge is essentially what we've done now. Everyone gets the same questions, everyone starts playing with JavaScript at the same time, and everyone finishes at the same time. And out of that, what we got, you can see how we play lots of public and private challenges. So what essentially we can see here, let's play one of them, right? So you can see we can compare your performance. So we can see side by side how good you are with JavaScript, right? So for every challenge, obviously, we got, you know, for example, this one we played literally yesterday. A lot of people, right? And then after we play the challenge, everyone gets a score, and then we display the results, who finished at the bottom, who finished, you know, for each position, and then we can compare different coding styles. So for example, you see Rafa, who's here, so he struggled a bit with the focus, so maybe he needed some help from Google or from any other resource, right? Speed, you know, the different kind of metrics, right? And apart from that, one of the activities we used to do as part of the bootcamp is we compare your code side by side. As you can see on the screen, right, for every question, this is intermediate. This is not beginner, so that's intermediate, because the majority of the guys are doing intermediate, even though some of them are doing expert already. So you can see for each question, different coding styles. That's the same question, that's the same problem, but that's a very good exercise towards getting familiar of different coding styles, right? Here we train job interviews. During a job interview, one of the things you'll have to prove is you need to prove you can read others' code, right? So this is one of the things that we train here as part of the bootcamp. And that's pretty much it. Actually, tomorrow we have a big coding challenge in tech systems. There will be more than 30 people joining it from 3 different countries. We do another one here in 2 weeks' time. So if anyone is interested, please have a look to Meetup to all the details. So is there any question, guys? No? So I hope you enjoy the session. Thank you very much for coming. If anyone is interested to join the bootcamp, go to codit.com. You got the book your place button. Just 3-4 places left. Thank you very much, and looking forward to see you soon. Cheers.